Who is the nameless one? A patient 86 who would come to be known as Ethan Hawke? No, Sun King. Let's talk about him. Thanks for watching JL's Comics. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all of our weekly content. With that out of the way, let's jump right into our story. Created by Max Bemis and Jason Burrows, the man who would be Sun King first appeared in 2017's Moon Knight issue 188. Much in the same way that Moon Knight is the avatar of Khonshu, Sun King is the avatar of Ra, Egypt of antiquities, god of the sun. Many details about the provenance of Sun King are lost to time and lost to childhood trauma and his subsequent dissociative amnesia, but we know enough to thread together a timeline and how he came to be the villain he is today. He says remembering his youth is like looking through a layer of jello. When Sun King was a child, he grew up in an impoverished family in America, somewhere in one of the southern states. At an early age, possibly due to the physical and emotional trauma of an abusive father, or possibly due to normal, latent genetic development, this boy exhibited pyrokinetic abilities, meaning he can create and control fire. He used this newfound ability to burn his own father alive. This saved him from being beaten more, but further contributed to his psychological trauma and his problems, and not long afterwards, this boy, now alone, found himself a vagrant, homeless, and alone in the streets. When he was old enough, he tried to escape that life by enlisting in the United States Army and was able to use a fake name and fake documents to hide his true identity. One day, while deployed in the Middle East, two of the soldiers in his unit stripped him of his uniform and started to ruthlessly beat him up as he was tied, naked and defenseless, or so they thought. Sun King burned them alive too. He quickly received a discharge and was remanded to a mental health ward of a military hospital to deal with his issues. Though he says he was reborn in those flames and the flickering light of fire, he saw God. After a while, when they discovered that this patient had joined the army with a fake name, he was transferred out of the VA and to the Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane and was admitted under the name Patient 86. Patient 86 was put under the care of a psychiatric physician named Dr. Emmett. Dr. Emmett also happened to be working at a hospital in Illinois called Putnam Psychiatric Hospital at a time when she was treating another patient named Marc Spector. Yes, that Marc Spector, Moon Knight. Marc was such a unique case that he often came to her mind, especially once she realized that he was Moon Knight. Dr. Emmett noticed some similarities between Patient 86 and Marc, namely bipolar disorder and their traumatic experiences in the Middle East. Emmett said he had fluctuating moods from mania to depression, along with a healthy dose of delusions. In one session, she told her patient that she'd seen the power of symbolism redeem a patient, split apart by trauma, that being a reference, of course, to Marc Spector. So she decided to introduce Patient 86 to ancient Egyptian mythology and to their god of the sun, Ra. Dr. Emmett told him how Marc took a path that turned him into Moon Knight, then gave her new patient all of her research and documentation from when Marc was under her care, as well as some research and history books on Egyptian mythology, truly believing that this would help him, that this might be his pathway back to sanity. And as Patient 86 dug deeper and deeper into his research, he started to become obsessed, hyper-focusing on Amun-Ra and Ra's adopted son, Khonshu. So let's pause here for a moment. In Marvel Comics lore, Amun-Ra goes back billions of years to the very beginnings of this third rock from the sun, Earth, even to a time before Earth's time, to the time of the elder gods like Set, Chthon, and Gaia. Chthon and Set warred and battled, and over time devolved from elder god to demon, while Gaia did not. Gaia went on to the demiurge itself, the very essence of Earth's energy grown into a sentient life force of Earth's biosphere, and Gaia was there to seek a way to stop the evil with which Chthon and Set were ruining Earth. The demiurge seeded Gaia with a baby, and this baby became Atum the God-Eater, a demogorge who fed upon demons and evil energy. When Atum was full, he left Earth and found a new home at the center of the solar system, right in the sun. Eventually, Atum returned to the planet Earth to help prepare for the arrival of the Celestials. Meanwhile, there were elder gods elsewhere in the cosmos. The forever youthful in morning, Khonshu was one such god. Khonshu would be a baby in the morning and would morph to old age by the end of the day. Khonshu would eventually be adopted as a son to Ra, and when Ra was back on Earth and the ancient Egyptians began worshipping him, Khonshu was included in their hierarchy of deities. When Ra became the god of the sun, Khonshu became god of the moon. So back to the story. Patient 86 was reading heavily about Ra, about the sun, and associating that with his own pyrokinetic powers. Through this, he came to believe that he was the god Ra. He cut his own face open and used his spilled blood to draw hieroglyphics on the walls of his room and demanded the hospital's staff call him by his new name. And now, with his personality having fully taken hold of his psyche, Patient 86 burned down Ravencroft Institute. Everyone perished except for Dr. Emmett. She did survive, but was severely burned in the fire. In Sun King's mind, the fire confirmed for him that he was truly the god of the sun and took on the name full-time of Sun King. Sun King then set out to find and destroy the Moon Knight, believing this was his purpose on Earth as a manifestation of Khonshu's father Ra. To do so, Sun King went to Raoul Bushman for help, and together they hunted a lady named Marlene. Time to pause again. Many years ago, an archaeologist named Dr. Peter L. Ron led an expedition into Egypt's Valley of the Kings to look for the lost tomb of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh named Seti II. For years, they dug and explored and eventually uncovered a chamber that housed artifacts and relics of Khonshu. A group of mercenaries that included Bushman, Marc, Spector, and Spector's longtime French friend Duchamp tried to claim his treasure as their own. To do so, they went after the archaeologist Peter's daughter, Marlene, demanding the location of the tomb from her. To scare her into giving up the location, Bushman shot and killed Marlene's dad, Peter. This is when the fracture between Spector and Bushman began, and their rivalry was born. Bushman nearly killed Spector too, but he was saved by Khonshu. It's how he became Moon Knight, and this path would also lead him to date Marlene. As a result, Bushman was terrified of using his knowledge to go after Moon Knight directly, which is why Sun King and Bushman decided to go after Marlene to get at Moon Knight in the present. Sun King and Bushman had Marlene call Moon Knight on his cell phone to come to her place in Westchester. And Marc did show up at Marlene's house, walking right into the ambush that was set up for him by Bushman and Sun King. Sun King met with Marc, telling him his name was Barry, and he further lied to Marc, saying he was Marlene's new boyfriend as a way of goading Marc into a fight. Bushman and his gang then appeared, with Bushman clutching the crying girl named Beatrice in his hand. It turns out that when Marc was with Marlene, it was when his Jake Loxley persona had mental control of Marc, and as Jake, he and Marlene had a daughter, and that the daughter was named Beatrice. However, when Marc was in one of his other personalities, he had no memory or knowledge of this time, and therefore no memory of his own daughter. So now Moon Knight quickly went out to save the girl, which is when Sun King and Moon Knight confronted each other. Sun King told Moon Knight, "My purpose is to make your death a mockery, that it had to be so tragic that it meant something, that torture and loss would be needed to complete the allegory, and to make Khonshu finally feel the weight of failure." Moon Knight grabbed Beatrice while the other two took Marlene, even writing on the wall in her burning house, "We have your queen." Moon Knight took Beatrice to safety back at his place, where Moon Knight and his daughter quickly grew close to each other, bonding over one of Dazzler's vinyl albums. But Moon Knight would have to go fight Sun King and rescue Marlene, so he had his old friend Frenchie take care of her while he went after Sun King. And while that was happening, Sun King had taken up residence at Bushman's old place on St. Palamon Island, along with another villain named Truth and all of their foot soldiers. An ironically named place given their current status. St. Palamon was a hermit during the reign of Roman Emperor Diocletian. Palamon brought together other hermits in the desert of Egypt and began evolving beliefs from Roman polytheism to the foundations of what would become monotheistic Christianity, and eventually found himself in the deserts of North Africa, out of Rome, and in exile. Much in the same way, King Tutankhamun's father Akhenaten brought Egypt from polytheism into a period of monotheism, where Egypt was to worship just one god, the god of the sun. In our Marvel Comics story, Sun King amassed a legion of followers of his own cult, and even renamed this island as Isle Ra. From this vantage point on Isle Ra, Sun King asked Truth if he was ready to build an army to dethrone the false Prince of Night. Bushman showed up at Moon Knight's apartment and tossed a brick through the window, holding his landlord at knife point as he was flanked by Truth and the other soldiers. Moon Knight was forced to get on their boat back to the Isle, where he met up with Sun King once again. And then on Isle Ra, Moon Knight was drugged, beaten, and tortured. Sun King had the upper hand and nearly destroyed Moon Knight's will. And beaten and broken, Marc was forced into a ring of fire to fight with Sun King, to kill the night and usher in the rebirth of the sun. Sun King was going to deliver the killing blow to Moon Knight, destroying the moon god Khonshu in the process, but Marc's mind was able to use the Jake Loxley personality and his love for Beatrice to find his inner strength, and with this he pushed back with a powerful haymaker right to Sun King's face, who landed hard on the ground, and Sun King tried to summon his fire, but he couldn't. Moon Knight defeated Sun King. And then, covered in blood and under the light of a nearly full moon, Marc said, "Thus ends the reign of the Sun King." Sun King kneeled before Moon Knight in defeat. And from there, Sun King was sent to a secure housing unit at another hospital, along with Truth, while the rest of his cult followers turned their allegiance to Moon Knight. And here's where we pause yet again. During World War II era Germany, a soldier named Ernst wanted to desert the National Party, so he shot and killed a man and took on that man's identity, a man named Yeats Perlman, then fled to America with that guy's wife and son, and that son happened to be named Elias Spector. In Chicago, where they settled, Elias eventually had a son named Marc. Yes, Marc Spector. And the family were so close that Marc would eventually call Yeats his uncle. Through his old connections, Yeats was still a member of a sect that would resurrect Red Skull, and he used that sect's life-prolonging technology on himself, which is why he was still alive in the present. Yeats was currently leading a sadistic cult called the Société des Sadiques. In the present, Yeats' cult broke Sun King and Truth out of the asylum he was imprisoned in, and Yeats, really still Ernst, wanted to convert Sun King to his own cult. So Moon Knight was hunting for Ernst and was able to penetrate the cult, where he disguised himself as a servant for an indoctrination ceremony. After Moon Knight revealed himself to Ernst, surprisingly invited Moon Knight to join him. And with a long history between them, Moon Knight said okay. Though to join, he'd have to go through a series of trials where the other inductees would fight each other. So Moon Knight participated and easily won. The last trial would be horrific. Moon Knight had a choice. He could either kill a child, have his own daughter killed, abstain, or he could fight the entire cult on his own. But to save the children, Marc chose the fight, and then was shot up with drugs while Ernst worked on converting him. Moon Knight then was able to kill Ernst, which is when Sun King was ordered to go after Moon Knight. But Sun King said he had a change of heart, that he was no longer evil, and instead of creating monsters, he wanted to defeat them, meaning he also wanted to defeat Ernst and his cult. Truth, however, did not share his belief, and he was converted. It was then that Sun King actually teamed up with Moon Knight, and together they stormed the Society's floating base on a converted shield helicarrier that they call the Anti-Carrier, and together they were able to defeat Truth, Ernst, and the cult, and save the day. Afterwards, Sun King willingly turned himself in, and he was recommitted for mental health treatment, and the ordeal was over for now. But he is still out there, so where will he turn up next? Perhaps another Moon Knight issue? Perhaps another comic book? Perhaps on Disney+? We'll have to wait and see, which means that's a wrap on this video, my friends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.